This story isn't just terrifying. It's a nightmare that never ends. There's a man named Jake who was always the adventurous type, a hiker at heart. He had explored many parts of the world, from the vast mountain ranges of Canada to the serene forests of the United States. But when he heard about the haunted forest near a small town in the UK, something about it intrigued him. It wasn't that he believed in ghosts or the supernatural. It was just the thrill of exploring somewhere unknown that called to him. The locals had warned him, of course, but Jake was the type who dismissed rumors as silly superstitions. The stories of strange occurrences, lost hikers, and an eerie, unnatural quiet that seemed to fall over the forest were nothing more than tales spun to scare outsiders, he thought. So, on a crisp fall morning, he packed his gear and set off. At first, the forest seemed perfectly normal, beautiful even. The golden leaves of the trees crunched beneath his boots, and the air was fresh with the scent of pine and earth. The sun filtered through the trees, casting dappled light on the path ahead. But as he went deeper, he couldn't shake the feeling that something was watching him. It started small, a faint rustling in the underbrush, too soft to be an animal, but enough to make him pause. He chalked it up to wind, but then the sound of a branch snapping behind him made his heart skip a beat. He spun around, but there was nothing, just the same peaceful forest, stretching out in every direction. He laughed it off, telling himself it was just the trees shifting in the breeze. But the feeling of being followed didn't go away. As he continued walking, he began to hear whispers, faint but distinct, his name, Jake, over and over, like a voice carried by the wind. He stopped in his tracks, his breath catching. "Hello?" he called out, his voice uneasy in the otherwise silent forest. No reply, just the whispers, too quiet to understand, but unmistakable. Unease started to seep into him, and he picked up his pace, trying to push the creeping fear down. The sun was beginning to dip below the horizon, and he realized that nightfall was quickly approaching. That's when he saw the cabin. It was small, old, and appeared abandoned, but it was shelter, and it was the only place in sight. He hurried toward it, hoping to rest and maybe even find some answers. Inside the cabin, the air was stale and cold. It had clearly been abandoned for years, but as Jake stepped through the threshold, he noticed strange carvings on the walls, some kind of symbols perhaps, but they seemed oddly familiar, as though they had been scratched in a hurry. He sat down on a rickety chair, trying to catch his breath. The whispers were louder now, closer. Panicked, he grabbed his pack and stood to leave. Before he could make it to the door, an elderly woman appeared in the doorway. Her face was pale, and her clothes were ragged. She smiled softly, but it wasn't a comforting smile. "You shouldn't be here, lad," she said. "This forest is not kind to those who wander its paths." Jake asked what she meant, and she told him a chilling story of a group of settlers who had lived in the area centuries ago. They had been massacred in this very forest, their lives taken brutally and without reason. Since then, their spirits had been trapped here, unable to move on, lost and angry. The whispers Jake had been hearing, they were the voices of those settlers, calling out for justice, calling out to be remembered. As the woman's words sank in, Jake felt a cold shiver run down his spine. The whispers grew louder, and the temperature in the cabin seemed to drop. He suddenly understood. The spirits weren't evil, but they were restless, seeking acknowledgement for the wrong that had been done to them. Their cries were not for revenge, they were for recognition. The night was drawing in fast now, and Jake realized it was time to leave. But as he stepped back toward the door, a gust of wind slammed it shut, and the whispers became a chorus of pleading voices. They didn't want him to forget them. Jake's heart raced, but he knew he had to get out before the spirits became desperate. With a final burst of strength, he forced the door open and bolted into the forest, the whispers following him as he ran. He didn't stop until he reached the edge of the forest, panting and terrified. Jake left the forest that night with a newfound respect for the stories the locals had told. He didn't fear the spirits. In fact, he understood them now. They weren't monsters. They were souls trapped in a place where their pain and suffering had been forgotten. They just wanted to be remembered, and Jake promised himself he would never forget. Hit subscribe and don't dare miss what's coming next. Or the next scream you hear might be your own.